Yoko Ono was the leading cause of the Beatles' demise and breakup.
No, I don't think so. I think there's a bunch of people that get bad raps in Beatles, the Beatles mythology. Alan Klein is one, and Yoko Ono is another. These are four guys. They started playing together when they're teenagers. They're now in their late 20s. They've matured. They're moving on to other things. Everybody has things going on in their life. They've got families. They're growing up, and marriages break up, and John Lennon's marriage broke up, and Yoko Ono. It's like anytime you have a family where one of the spouses becomes disinterested or interested in somebody else, and the marriage breaks up, then everybody likes to come down on somebody, to explain why this marriage broke up. Sometimes they just break up because these were kids who got married because Cynthia got pregnant, and they hadn't really thought a great deal about where this was going to go in the long run. Yoko Ono just happened to have lots of ideas. She was, and that's just who she is. So this is a band that was already beginning to kind of break apart at the seams, if you will. And then she's just part of the amalgam that's going into it. George was headed off. George wanted to have more of his songs recorded on albums. He was growing and maturing as a songwriter. He needed more space. John was coming, had kind of come out of a somewhat quiet period of writing songs. He just kind of like exploded again, and he wanted more room to do his own material. Paul certainly had always had lots of musical ideas. He wanted more room. They all wanted more room. There's only so much room in the Beatles. They basically outgrew the Beatles. And you can't blame Yoko, just as you can't really blame Linda Eastman, or Pattie Boyd. It's four guys that grew up, and when they got up, it's like high school kids. You're friends with kids in high school. Maybe you see them now, maybe you don't. But we get older, we mature, we grow up, we grow new friends, we have new interests. They're not all. It's not the same thing anymore for them.
All right. Beatles were the most influential band to come out of the '60s. Musically influential, maybe
I think
specify.
So. I think you can say that. There's certainly other really important bands in that area, but I would maintain that the Beatles were the most influential. Trying to think who else could even compete. Elvis is certainly important. He's not a band, but Elvis.
Could you classify him possibly more as a performer, maybe? Because he was interested in acting too. No, Elvis. He was very much. Although I know the Beatles were too, but
no, the Beatles were never really interested in acting. It was something they did because that was the model for what pop stars did. You became a pop star. Where do you go after being a pop star? Well, there maybe is more money in being a film star, more prestige to it. But you read what Lennon talks about. That was somebody else's film. We were just acting in somebody else's film, and they weren't even acting. When they did Help, for example, it was they were so stoned most of the time that they had to reshoot and reshoot and reshoot. They're totally unprofessional. Really not. They were not into the acting part. Now, Ringo had a kind of modest acting career for a while.
Right.
That was more. Even that I think was just what else is he going to do at that point? He just left. The band, the most important band in the world, just broke up, and he's the only one really not writing songs. So, he has a little bit of a solo career to him. He's still recording, obviously.
Yep.
But you can't really compare him with Lennon, McCartney, or Harrison in that regard.
All right. Last question then. You're
42.
Well, I'm gonna, I guess. Your three go-to songs, Beatles songs, the ones that you feel like you could listen to again and again and again. I know it's so hard.
Well, I listen to them all again and again and again.
Right.
The book I'm working on right now, right at the moment I'm working on Nowhere Man. I probably in the last week listened to Nowhere Man 30 times, 40 times, and that's not just, there's different versions of it you can listen to. There's different mixes of it. For example, there's the mono mix, there's the stereo mix, there's the '87 stereo mix, there's the new remastered stereo mix. There was, there's all these different versions of it, and each one of them reveals particular kinds of things about the nature of the recording. And there sometimes you just have to listen really carefully. The guitar solo, the guitar parts, the electric guitar parts in it. Is it one player or two players? Is two players kind of like playing in unison, or is it one player? Is it George Harrison double tracking himself? I listen to lots of things over and over again. I guess answering your question, which I don't want to do.
I know it's hard to pick favorite songs.
Strawberry Fields has always intrigued me. It's a fascinating song, structurally and historically, in terms of how that song develops. I keep listening to Help, because it's a fascinating kind of transitional song, because it's got the music material in it is really interesting here. But here's Lennon, kind of under the influence of Bob Dylan, but also kind of revealing much about his psychological state at the time. So that's kind of complex. Third one, I don't know. I don't know. Across the Universe is a fascinating song. Yeah. It's a John Lennon song, so for the most part.
So am I safe to assume that John Lennon may possibly be your favorite Beatle? I know it's even more difficult to pick a favorite Beatle.
I don't know whether
I won't tell the other three though.
If I had, I'm really sad that. Well, for a variety of reasons, obviously, that George Harrison died, because he's the one I think with whom I had the most in common. He's also the one who actually might have actually had some context to meet in the interview. No, if I was going to hang out with anybody, it would have been George Harrison. I think John was just a little bit too caustic, a little bit too acerbic. People I know who knew him, at least casually, not the ones who knew him close, but the ones who knew him casually knew him as somebody who could be just absolutely, rip people to shreds, and just angry, and at least in the mid-60s.
So right.
Maybe he mellowed out later on. But I think he also kind of edged later in his life too. Somebody that guarded his privacy, and for good reasons. In the end, it killed him.